So we're continuing with the volume of a cone, only today we're not finding the volume, we're given the volume. Instead, we're finding other measurements, like for this problem, we're finding the height. So the volume of a cone is pi r squared h and then divided by 3. So this time they give us the volume. So we'll put the volume where the v goes into the formula. So I got 2,260 and 8 tenths equals, and yeah, that should technically be about, since I'm going to estimate pi at 3.14, but that's right, we'll just write the equal sign. And it looks like they gave us a radius. They didn't give us the height this time, so I'll put a letter there, or a variable, right? Variables can be used to represent missing values, and divided by 3. Notice that I'm not going to put the divided by 3 on this side. I don't do it on both sides like as if I were solving an equation, because when I write it there, yes, you have to write it to both sides. But if it's already there from the formula, you wouldn't do it to both sides this time. So we're going to go ahead and grab our calculators right now. We're going to simplify the right side of the equation. We're going to multiply these numbers together. Remember, start with your exponents first. 12 times 12 times pi. And then divide by 3. So all those numbers over there is going to equal 152 and 72 hundredths. We have this, and this together equal 100, what was it? 150 and 72 hundredths. So all that, we don't know what h is yet. We know this side, or the volume, is 2,260 and 8 units. Now, in order to do this, we can go ahead and divide these two now with our calculators. And you guys will just clear out your calculator, hit this first, division this to get the height. But I want to show you a shortcut if you're interested. So I know that to divide a number is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So if I want to divide 2260.8 by 150.72, I can take the reciprocal, or just hit this button right here, and then multiply it by 2260.8. And no, you don't have to do it this way. You can just punch it in your calculator, this divided by this, and you're going to get it 15 either way. Now, of course, if you guys used your pi button, it's going to look a little bit different, but you'll see it around about 15. It'll be close. Close is correct when you have pi. Notice that our units of measure is not cubed because we're not finding volume this time. We're finding the height. You guys go ahead and pause the video and try this next problem on your own. So it's very similar to the last problem, right? They give us the volume, so I'll put that where v goes in our formula. I always know what pi is, or about. Yes, you could put approximate symbols there. So it's pi r squared. We don't have r this time, so I'll put my letter where I don't have something, where something's missing, I should say. And they give us the height, but don't forget this is a cone, so don't forget to divide by 3. We're going to simplify these 3 here and make one number out of those. Let's grab our calculators. Remember, you simplify both sides of an equation first when you're solving. So I'm going to go 3.14 times 9, and then divide by 3 and get one number from all that mess. And those 3 are the same as 9 and 42 hundredths. 9 and 42 hundredths, or close to that if you use your pi button, right? These guys become this one number, and r squared is still there, as is 84 and 78 hundredths. Now, if I need to know what r is, I got to isolate the r. I work farthest away from the variable first, so I'm going to get rid of the coefficient before I try to get rid of that exponent. So just grab your calculator again. If you know the shortcut I gave you, just go ahead and hit reciprocal times 8478. If not, let me just show you the other way. Clear it out. Punch this in your calculators first. 84 and 78 hundredths division, 9 and 42 hundredths, and we get 9. Now that's what the radius is squared. That means if I have a circle and the radius, I took the radius and I made a square out of it, I would have that many squares. But I just want this length here. Or in other words, I need r, I have r squared. So, remember how we said that in class? Remember we learned how to say that? What do I do next? I take the square root of both sides. And when I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to have r is equal to 3. The radius would be 3 for this problem. Now it's 3 yards, not 3 yards cubed, because this part, it's this many cubes, but over here, this radius is linear, not volume or cubic. So we'll go ahead and continue. Try this next problem. Pause the video now. All right, let's see how you guys did. So volume of a cone is pi r squared h divided by 3. So they give me the V, the volume. I always know what pi is about. Doesn't look like they gave me the radius this time. So I'll use a variable since that's missing. And they did give me the height, and the formula calls for a divide by 3 on this part. So let's grab our calculators, simplify the right side. Since the left side's already simplified, we'll go 3.14 times 3, then divide by 3. Oops, I messed up. That's not a 3, that's a 13. Let me do that again. 3.14 times 13, then divide by 3. Now, we get that nasty number there. Whenever you get a number like that, you guys can just go ahead and round it to the nearest hundredths. Your answer will be close enough to get it right. So I'm going to call that 13 and 61 hundredths. So all this mess over here is 13 and 61 hundredths. These three numbers I made into one times r squared. Okay. So we would just grab our calculators here and we go 27553.5. Pause the video if I'm going too fast, you guys. Divided by 13 and 61 hundredths. And we get about that r squared. So that's how many squares, but I got to get r, so I take the square root of that. And that's about 45. So the radius is about 45, right? If I were to be technical, I'd write that approximate symbol. But diameter is times 2, so if I multiply that by 2, I get a diameter of 90 inches. Now, let's look at that shortcut for this problem here, okay? If I were to do that mess over there, 3.14 times 13, I hope some of you did use this shortcut, divided by 3. Now, if I'm going to divide 27, all that by this number here, that's the same as taking the reciprocal of this and multiplying it to 27553.5 and taking the square root, and that's another way to get our answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our next new type of question. Looks like the one that we did a couple days ago, but it's not. This time we have what's called the slant height. The formula for the volume of a cone is pi r squared h all divided by 3. But this is not the height. This is the slant height. It's on the side. This is what you would use for surface area. But we could use that to get our height, our h from the formula. And if you guys see this shape, I'm hoping that's looking familiar to you guys. Yep, that's another right triangle or Pythagorean theorem problem. So if we're missing height, they give us slant height. We find the height using Pythagorean theorem. They give us a diameter all the way through, so halfway through would be 9. So I have 9 squared plus, we're missing this side, plus b squared equals c squared, which is our hypotenuse squared, right? 9 times 9 is 81. If you guys forgot 15 squared, grab your calculators, 225. Okay, let's grab them anyways and do this part here. I got 225 minus 81. So b squared is 144. But I need to know what b is, not b squared, so I take the square root of both sides. It's already in my calculator. Just hit the square root button. And I get a length of 12 units, or in other words, the height of the triangle is 12. So now I can find the volume of the cone. So the cone is pi times radius, take half of that, right, which was 9, squared, times the height. We found out using Pythagorean theorem, all divided by 3, pi r squared h divided by 3 when it's a cone. Grab our calculators and do order of operations. We do exponents first, then we can multiply the rest of the top numbers, and in the end is when we divide by 3. And we get a volume of about, looks like about 1,017 and 36 hundredths. Let's see if I messed up there. 1,000. Oh, no, I got it right. Units cubed. All right. So I want you guys to take a look at this next problem here. Pause the video and see if you can do this problem on your own before I show you how to do it. Pause the video now. So let's see how to do this problem. Again, we're missing the height of the triangle, which we need, right? Volume for the cone, that's our ultimate goal, is pi times radius. If this is 3, the radius, excuse me, if the diameter is 3, the radius, if the diameter is 6, the radius is 3. So I go pi times r squared. I need to get the height, and some of you can see right now that it's a 3, 4, 5 triangle, and then all divided by 3. Okay, but let's back up because some of you didn't, maybe you're not going to remember the 3, 4, 5 shortcut. So let's back up. I get this distance here is 3, so I go a squared plus whatever this is squared equals the hypotenuse or the long side squared. And then when you solve that, you guys should get a 4 for that, okay? Square those two, subtract the 9, take the square root. So let's go ahead and find the volume for this. Go ahead and get your calculators now. You guys punch it in. R squared first, then you can multiply pi, then you can multiply the height. Don't use slant height, right? Not the 5, use 4. And then you guys can divide by 3. Whoops, I messed up. Let me start over. And divide by 3. And we get, looks like 37 and 68 hundredths. This time I'm finding volume, so it's cubed units. All right. If you guys got it right, let's move on to the next one. If you didn't, pause it. Do it again until you get it right on your own. Pause the video, try this problem. So it looks like this is 10 all the way across, so it's radius of 5. We're going to go 5 squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? The Pythagorean theorem for this triangle. Leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared, okay? So we got 25 plus b squared equals 13 squared is 169. You just grab your calculators, okay? And we go 169 minus 25 to solve this equation. We get b squared is 144, and when we take the square root of both sides, the square root of 144 is 12. So in your calculators, you would just hit the square root button to get that 12. So this height over here is 12 units across. Now I can find the volume now that I know the radius and the height of the cone. So I go pi r squared times height, all divided by, don't forget the divided by 3 part. Grab your calculators. Clear out your last problem. 5 times 5 first, then times pi, then times height, then divide by 3, and you should have got a volume of 314 units cubed. All right, let's go down to our first review problem. Pause the video now, try this problem. So remember, we're multiplying powers with the same base, so we copy the base and add the exponents. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 0 is still 4, so I got k to the 4th. But now look at your coefficients, right? You got to multiply your coefficients. 2 times 1 is just 2. The answer to this problem is 2k to the 4th. Next review problem. Solve this equation. So solving equations, we're dealing with fractions, just make everything a fraction, right? Convert this to a fraction. 3 times 6 is 18. 18 plus 2 is 20. 20 thirds is the same fraction as 6 and 2 thirds. On the other side, negative 1 and 3 fifths. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. So 8 fifths is the same number as 1 and 3 fifths, but it's a negative number. And for 4, we do add the opposite, rule for subtraction. How do we make 4 into a fraction? Just put it over 1. Now that everything's a fraction, we can go ahead and isolate the variable. I see I have a negative 4 over here, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides, but I'm dealing with a fraction, so I'll think of it as 4 over 1 or a fraction. That will get rid of this. My goal is to get rid of everything that's on the same side as the variable. Whoops, keep doing that. So 8/5 n is left on this side. Over here, I have negative 20. Remember, when we have a negative, just put it up in the numerator up there. Negative 20 thirds and 4 over 1. How do I add these two fractions together? Well, remember, I need a common denominator. Look at my multiples of 3, right? 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3. Multiples of 1. When's the first time they're the same? It's going to be 3. So in other words, I'm going to rewrite 4 so that it's still the number 4, but it has a 3 in the denominator. So now that they're the same size pieces, I can add the numerators and keep the bottom number the same. When I add those numerators, I can use teams. I have 20 negatives and 12 positives. Opposite teams mean subtract. There's a difference of 8. Negatives have more, so it's negative 8/3. Now to finish this problem, I go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal of that fractional coefficient. I flip it upside down, multiply both sides by that number, and that will get rid of that. That's what I want. I want it to just say n, and then I'll know what n is. That's what solving is, finding the missing value for the variable that makes the equation true. But if I do it to this side, I have to do it to this side also. So I'm going to put parentheses around that so it's not a subtraction problem, right? Put parentheses around that, multiply by the same number, right? If I did negative 5/8 here, because I flipped that upside down, I have to do the same thing here, negative 5/8. When I multiply two fractions, I can do my factor trees, cross out my ones, but I can cross out these ones right here. Negative times negative is positive. I have an answer of 5/3. Now, let's say I did that answer and I didn't see it. I saw a mixed number. I can take negative 5/3 down here and convert it and see what I get. I go in and out. I divide. 3 goes into that one time, and my remainder is 2. My divisor is 3. 1 and 2/3 is the same answer, so I'd pick that one as my answer on the quiz next week. All right, looks like we got 4 more review problems. We're going to solve this multi-step equation. Pause the video, try it now. So remember, solving equations, we simplify both sides first. We want to do the rule for subtraction though, right? So I have add the opposite. Whoops, I wrote my negative kind of high there. I can change my parentheses into brackets when I have parentheses inside parentheses, right? They alternate. So all I did is drew 2 sticks. I made subtraction into addition. Now we have to simplify both sides of an equation. When we're solving, we want to simplify first, so that means distribute first. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times negative 7x is negative 56x. This side's already simplified. So somehow my v turned to an x. That's supposed to be a v. Sorry about that. This is a v. Make it a v. Okay. So let's go ahead and now that we simplified both sides by distributing and combining like terms, we didn't have to do that, but we would have if we could have. Then we'll go ahead and add 56v to both sides. That's going to give us our variables on the same side, right? And that's going to, when I add these two over here, I got 56 plus 5. That's going to be what, 61v. And then I'll go ahead and subtract 8 from both sides. And I get 61v equals 0. Divide both sides by the coefficient. And 0 divided by anything is just 0. So my answer, the solution for this, was 0 this time. 3 more review problems. You guys go ahead and pause the video. Try to solve this system. So we have one of the variables actually in both equations, one of the variables isolated, so I'm ready for the substitution method to solve the system. I can take this and plug it in where the other y is. Or in other words, when they're both in slope-intercept form, just write them equal to each other without any y's. So we're using the substitution method to solve a system of equations. So this equals this. This is going to tell me where these two lines intersect, right? All right, so let's go ahead and do the rule for subtraction. Add the opposite. We're going to simplify both sides. That's done for us. Now we're going to get a variable on the same side, so I'm going to add 1/3 x. And when I'm moving my variables, I take the whole thing. I take the variable with it, don't I? These are gone. I have -4 equals. We have a common denominator already, so we're ready to add these fractions. Add the two numerators. Add the top number. 7 plus 1 is 8. Keep the same bottom number 3 because that's the size of the pieces. That's why I don't add them. It's how big they are. I just add the tops, not the bottoms. Now that both sides are simplified and I have my variables on the same side, now I can work farthest away from the variable doing inverse operations. So I'll subtract 4 from both sides. Sorry about the knocking there. I'm trying to get my family members to stop making banging noises in the background there while I'm making this video for you guys. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. All right, cross out our ones. And these two lines where they intersect, my x value is -3. So in order to get my y value now, I take this -3 and I just plug it into one of those equations. So for the first one here, if I put a -3 right here, I would get, let me clear off some space here for us so we can do the next part. Finish solving this equation. So x is -3, right? I take one of my equations. And normally if I have one equation where one y is isolated, not the other, I'd use the one where the y is isolated if I'm finding my y, right? So I take my equation, I plug in the x where the x goes. Remember to do your rule for subtraction here, so that's actually -4, right? And y equals, and when I multiply these two, remember multiplying fractions make everything a fraction. Cross out your ones. Negative times negative is positive, and 1 times 1 is 1. I have a 1 and a -4. Opposite teams when we're adding means subtract. Negatives have more. So these two lines are going to intersect at that point, -3 and -3. These coordinates will make both of these true. Okay. Now, remember, it's possible that your answer on the quiz could be no solution or infinitely many also. So just a reminder, when you guys are solving, if the variables cross out completely and you get two equations, two numbers that are the same on both sides, that's infinitely many. But if the x's cross out, you can't isolate the x's and you get something that are two different numbers, then that's no solution. So just review how to do that before the quiz because you might get one of those next week. All right, so here we have 2 points. We have to write the equation for a line. Okay, so let's go ahead and take these 2 points and get the slope first. We'll go y minus y over x minus x. Add the opposite. Use teams. Add the opposite. Use teams. Negative divided by negative is positive. Factor trees, cross out your ones in order to always reduce. My fraction is 1/4. Now we need to get the y-intercept, so I can take 1 point, doesn't matter which one, and the slope that we found and plug it into slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. We can use that to get the y-intercept, so I can put the y where the y goes, put the slope that we found where it goes, and the x where the x goes, and solve for b, because b is missing right now, or the y-intercept. Multiply these two, cross out my ones, isolate the variable, and you get your y-intercept. Now that we have our slope and our y-intercept, we have what we need to write the equation for a line. And our last review problem, you guys go ahead and graph this equation. Pause the video, try that now. So I know my y-intercept is at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my slope is 3, so I'm going to rise 3 from this point, 1, 2, 3, and run 1. Remember, you got to make your slope into a fraction because you have to rise and run like that R. It's really hard to write on this tablet. Sorry, guys. rise and run. Okay? Now, if it was negative, you'd fall and run. Okay? But it should look something like this. And when you're looking on the test, there's actually going to be 4 options to choose from. There's only going to be one that works, right? There's only going to be one that has a steep slope like that and a y-intercept at +5 and it's a positive slope. In fact, a lot of these problems like this, you're going to be able to do without showing any work. Okay, as long as you understand slope and y-intercept. All right, so hope that helps. We'll see you guys soon.